Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Patty Smolin. I am the business reference librarian at the Schaumburg Township District Library. And tonight we are hosting a program, Get Ready, Get Set, Sell. And we are so pleased to welcome back Linda Dressler from Remax Suburban and Jean Walters from Home Trust Mortgage. So hello, you two. Thanks again for coming here at the beginning of the year. It's always right after the Super Bowl that we're able to get a pulse of the real estate market. I want to make mention that I have sent out a feedback evaluation form earlier today when I shared the Zoom link with all registered attendees. So if after tonight's program, you can take a few moments and share your comments with our presenters, you can either send that form back to me or to them directly. I'm going to put all of our contact information in the chat in just a moment, but your feedback is really important to the library and also to our presenters. We do want to hear from you if you have any other suggested topics in this field that you'd like to have addressed too. Before we begin, please note that while library buildings have adjusted their hours, we are still open and reference librarians are still active and reachable to answer your questions by phone, chat, email, in our current hours of operation. If we are your home library, the Schaumburg Library Card gives you remote access to all of our electronic sources. If you need help using or applying these, you can certainly contact me or any of my reference colleagues, and we can walk you through how to best apply them to your research. So our staff is still active and in motion to retrieve materials and can put them on hold for you in our drive-up window or our pickup lockers at the Central Library or curbside pickup at our Hoffman Estates branch or our Hanover Park branch. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Linda and Jean. Linda and Jean are going to be answering questions periodically through tonight's presentation. So they do have slides. They are open to sharing their slides if you would like to contact them directly. And I'll be fielding some questions. So you're welcome to enter them into the chat or the Q&A. So again, Linda and Jean, welcome back.
Thank you, Patty. Thanks for having us. Hi, everybody.
Glad to be back.
Here to talk about selling your house. And I'm sure some of you are curious about what happened, from between 2019 and 2020 as well. So we have a slide presentation for you to try and help keep us on track and to let you know what the process is, right? Because many of you are probably wondering what happens between the time I decide I want to sell and actually sell the house. So welcome to Home Selling Winter Edition 2021, thankfully presented in conjunction with Schaumburg District Township Library. Again, thank you, Patty. My name is Linda Dressler. I'm with Remax Suburban in Schaumburg. We are in the strip mall right next to Richard Walker's Pancake House on Roselle Road. I've been a real estate agent since 2007. Not necessarily the best time to join because that's when things were happening with the market, but I've learned how to work hard and I'm still here. I do work full time and I really do love my job. I love helping people. So that's why we put on presentations like this, is to be able to answer the questions that maybe you're mulling over, maybe getting misinformation on from online or from Googling or from a friend. We just like to give you the truth so that you know what to expect. And one of my preferred lenders, the preferred lender, Jean Walters.
Good evening, everyone. Jean Walters. I'm with Home Trust Mortgage. We're out of Schaumburg. I've been in the business for over 20 years and I've been working with Linda for quite some time now. We do a lot of charity stuff together. We do bell ringing. You'll see us dressed up over at the Jewel with the Salvation Army bell ringing, and we do a pajama drive together. So we do quite a bit together, and very proficient in home buying and selling. And today we're going to talk mostly about selling. I'm here, even though I don't really get involved in the selling, but I'm going to give you some tips as a seller, what to expect from your buyer. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
I think that's really important because that's all part of the step, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we'll go through the slides, and if you have any questions, please just feel free to type them out in chat. And if we miss them because we're busy with our presentation, Patty will stop us and ask your questions. We are here to answer specific questions if you have some that don't follow the scope of our slides. So please feel free, and we'll have time for questions at the end as well if you'd like to hold your questions or have something more specific that doesn't fit the outline, right, of the slides. So if you want to know what happened last year to this past year, I have the data for 2019 versus 2020. The first set of data is our attached dwellings. That would be your townhomes, your condos, your duplexes, anything that shares a wall would be considered an attached dwelling. So in 2020, we sold 822, and in 2019, we sold 833 for the entire year. That's a decrease of 1.3%. The average price went up from 184 in 2019 to 191 in 2020. That's a 3.6% increase. And the median sale price went up as well. When you're talking about detached, it's single family home dwellings. We sold more, 30 more than the previous year, which is a 6.4 increase. And price went up from 340 to 353. So it's a 3.9% increase. Median sale price went up 3% as well. So you'll see that pricing is moving upwards, which is a good thing for you if you're selling your home. What we're experiencing right now is a seller's market because we don't have enough inventory to sell right now. We have about 3 months worth of inventory to sell right now, and average, or what they consider an even market, is about 6 months worth of inventory. Is that what you find too, Jean? Yeah. So it is a good time to sell numbers wise, right? Your prices are going up. The buyers are able to get lower interest loans right now. There are buyers out there. And there's a shortage of houses on the market. So if you're in a position to be able to move, it's a good time to sell.
Seeing a lot of multiple offers right now.
A lot of multiple offers right now, a lot of competition. So we start off by saying, what's your goal? You know, I just said, if you're ready and able to move, right? So you may have a goal because you need to relocate with a job. You may have a goal because you need to get into a bigger home and maybe be multi-generational living, staying in the same area, but having your parents move home with you. Or maybe you need to go smaller because your kids have now all moved out. You know, there are lots of reasons why you may want to change where you're living. You just want to make sure that you have a goal and that it's pretty much defined for you. We talk about SMART goals. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, right? You know, having a goal. Now I'm telling you that prices are up, that inventory is low, that interest is low, but 6 months from now, I can't tell you that that's going to be the same thing. So when it comes home to home selling, you need to make sure the data is very relevant. The most recent data is what's the most relevant. Okay, thank you. So the process, once you've decided that you're going to sell, is to interview realtors. You may get referrals from friends. You may get somebody say something on Facebook. I would say do your own research and do Google searches on the people for, you know, the names that you've been given, the referrals you've been given. There are lots of questions you should ask your realtor. You want to know that they're working full time. You want to know, the question that's on top of this slide is important. What's your list price to sale price ratio? And what that means is, what's the difference between where you listed it and where you sold it? Because you want that as close together as possible. If someone says it's 10%, that means that they've gotten your list, they've kind of bought your listing. They've told you it may be worth more than it's really worth, according to the data, and then had to lower your price 3 times before they could get it sold. You don't want that. You want somebody who's going to be honest with you, that's not going to waste your time. What's their strategy? What do they do for marketing? That's also really important because you're paying a commission. So if they're just putting it into the multiple listing service and doing nothing else, are they earning their money? Right? So that's what I would compare with real estate agents is, what do you do for your money? What services do you offer? What kind of referrals can you give me if I need to fix my house? All those things are very relevant when you're interviewing a realtor. But first and foremost, you have to know, like, and trust them. You have to feel comfortable talking to them. If you don't feel comfortable asking them the hard questions, then they're probably not the right fit for you.
I think also one thing that you can help explain a little bit too is the pronunciation of realtor.
Yes. Lots of people say realtor and it's realtor. So that is the correct pronunciation. Even people in our field sometimes pronounce it wrong.
Some people get offended by that.
I'm sorry, can I interject for a moment? Because I am a librarian and not a librarian, so I will identify with that.
So you
But
can
nice
commiserate.
There was actually a TV show called Santa Clarita Diet where the main characters were realtors, and there was a big thing throughout the show about people calling them realtors.
Realtors. You don't go, and that's what, what we respond to that usually is, do you go to a docator?
Right.
Just something goofy, trade related. Okay, so once you've established who your realtor is going to be, you'll want to meet with them because they will be a fount of knowledge for you. They will do actual comparable data. You call it a comparable market analysis, a CMA, and they should be comparing apples to apples, your model house in your subdivision, not your model of a house within a mile, because living in Schaumburg-Kaufman area, there are maybe 5 subdivisions within a mile. They're not necessarily,
Right.
that spread out, and different subdivisions mean different price points sometimes. And that lots of time varies by the school, right? That somebody's going to. So you'll determine, your agent will give you the data and the information for your property value for the location, the market, the age, the condition, the improvements, and the neighborhood. Those are the things that go into the valuation. Again, your realtor should also talk to you about marketing strategy. What do they do? How do they do it? Where do they put your listing? Do they do anything extra? Do they do open houses? That's where they can invite the public in. Do they do broker tours? That's where they can invite other brokers from the neighborhood to come view the property. So there are a lot of different things that we do in our job that's more than just helping to look at pretty houses. So part of what you might want to know is if some of you who are selling might be buying too. So this is a slide that I kind of put in for Jean, because if you're buying too, where are you getting your down payment? Now, we all know there's a myth that you have to put 20% down, but you don't, but it's better if you do.
Yeah, because then you won't have the mortgage insurance, PMI, private mortgage insurance. So when it can be a little tricky when you're selling and buying at the same time. Typically, you would have to sell your home before buying the home, and that could be all in the same day. Now, if you have down payment separate from the sale of your property, then you can purchase before buying if you need to, but you do have to qualify for both properties. There's options of getting home equity lines of credit or bridge loans, but you still have to qualify for all those loans with your loan to purchase your property if you're going to try to buy it and close before your sale.
And the reason we're touching on this was because if you, like the little graphic there is, if you're planning on taking equity line, is it?
Yeah,
equity line of credit, so that you could take the 20% out of the house, it has to be done before you list it. And the loan has to be closed, right, before you list it. So it's something to consider if that's what's happening in your family, if you're buying a house and selling a house. Because right now, and we'll talk about more when the buying section comes, right. Our next talk is March 8th on buying. Because things are so competitive, because inventory is so tight, if you have a contingency where you have to sell your house first to buy the other house, and there are 3 other offers that don't have that, you might not get that house.
Right.
So that's why we kind of touched on other options. So once you discuss all of that, you'll sign a listing agreement or a listing contract with your realtor. What's on a listing contract? That's the next slide. The type of listing, there can be an exclusive listing. That's the only kind I sign, which means that you can't have 3 different agents selling your house. The reason why most agents will want an exclusive listing is if you have 3 people signed up to sell your house and I work just as hard as the other 2, but one of the other ones gets the contract or gets the buyer, I don't get paid. So that's how that works. So I do exclusive listings. Your property information will be on there, your PIN, your tax information, if there's any special service areas or special assessments, the list price that you have decided upon. Now, while I, as a realtor, will give you the data on what the price is, it's your house. You can sell it for what you want to sell it for. I'll give you my opinion and my experience, and then you have to use it because it's your property. Now, not all realtors will be like that. There will be some realtors that will walk in and say, you have to fix X, Y, Z, you have to do it this way, this way, this way, right? And I prefer, and hopefully you'll find somebody that matches your style, but I prefer to tell you in my experience, you can do A, B, or C, and this is what will happen with A, B, or C, and you make the decision you're comfortable with. I think that's the best way to do it. But there will be people out there who tell you your house is worth more than it is to try and get the listing from you, unfortunately. So just be careful, beware. There will be a listing expiration date. I typically do 6 months for my listings. In this market, things are usually not lasting 6 months. They're selling a lot more quickly than
6
that.
minutes.
6 minutes. It does happen quickly. I've had listings where you put it in and then within 24 hours, there are 20 showings and 3 offers. So it does happen. On that listing agreement, you'll explain to the realtor what personal property is being conveyed. Here in our area, we usually sell our houses with our appliances, right? So we usually sell the washer and dryer with it, the oven, the dishwasher, the microwave, anything that's attached. You don't have to, though.
You have to take your spouse and your kids with you.
Yes. Don't leave them behind. But if there's something that you don't want to sell, let's say you did just buy a brand new washer and dryer, you just tell your real estate agent, your realtor, and they just won't put that on the listing. So all the duties and responsibilities and timelines and all of that other gobbledygook is in on the contract, as well as the commission rate. Commissions are not standard for real estate because that would be, is the right word, collusion? Right? If everybody decides to do one thing, then you as sellers have no choice, right? So we don't even discuss between other offices what commission rates we charge. I will say, and I know it's on recording here, so I'll say it very carefully, that usually it's about 5 or 6%. That commission rate is split in some form or fashion. I split it directly in half between the buyer's agent bringing the buyer and between myself. So that commission is all you're paying the realtors, but it's for both sides, the buyers and the sellers. So another part of that appointment with your realtor might be them walking around to look at the condition and give you just some suggestions on what to do before you list your house. Of course, before you list it, you want to make sure it's sparkling clean. You want to make sure all the light bulbs are there. There aren't any dark spaces, right? You want to make sure that there's not like a 6 chandelier, like 6 light bulb chandelier with 2 of the light bulbs out, or some are the white and some are the yellow glow. You know, you just want to make it match up. There may be some mini renovations that you can do, and I'm talking really simple things. Maybe you have a couple cracked switch plates, or, you know, simple things. Maybe you have the puppy chewed up a piece of baseboard. You may want to replace that. Are they things you have to do? No, but remember, the more you do, the better it will show in your price because you're pricing it for condition. So if you don't do some of these fixes, then you may just have to price it a little bit lower. If you don't want to repaint your house, that's okay, but you need to price it because you know someone's going to come in and have to repaint it. You haven't painted it in the last 10 years. You want to stage each room. And the biggest thing that you want to do is create the illusion of space. So you want to make it look as empty as possible. You don't want to make it look like there's so much stuff that you have to move because there's no room for your stuff, because the buyers will pick up on that. Also, creating the illusion of space helps them picture their own things in your home. And that's very, very important. You can half empty your closets and drawers. It makes it easier if you pack stuff up, and if stuff like seasonal clothing or something, when you're moving, you can pack that up and put it in. You can put it in the garage if you have space in your garage. They know you're moving. So if you have storage bins in your garage, it's not a big deal.
It is a big difference when you're looking in a closet and you're looking at a house and it's so jam-packed that the shirts are going in all kinds of different directions and there's all kinds of clutter underneath it, as opposed to seeing a closet that has maybe 10 or 15 shirts in there. It's very well spaced, like you see in the movies.
Right.
You never see this at home, but in the movies you see each shirt is spaced
It's
3
color
inches
coordinated
apart,
too.
color coordinated. Shoes are all in the right direction. That just shows well.
Right. And if it's the stuff you're using in the meantime while you're getting ready to move, it makes it easier for you too. I cannot tell you now, I'm a young age woman, and I've gone through different sizes of clothing and they all stay crammed in the closet, but it's so freeing. It negates some of the chaos of wondering what to wear too, because you just pick it out, you can put it on. So that's something that you could do. Just a little tip. You don't want to neglect less glamorous areas of your home. So what I mean by that is I am always so impressed when I go to a seller's home and there is no dust on their furnace. I know it sounds stupid, but if you go into your mechanical room or you take care of where the laundry is, when buyers see that, that's how they assume you keep your house all the time. So if you've cleaned that just because you're selling your home, they assume that you've kept it like that all the time. Another big thing that buyers look at is bathrooms. So if you have the caulking that just is looking a little ratty, it's not a big deal to cut the caulking, your bead of caulking around your tub or your sink, cut it off and redo it, right? Well, little things like that.
Big deal for me.
Little
I'd
things
have to
like
hire
that.
someone.
Hire somebody? It shouldn't be that expensive.
But it's not expensive.
No. You want to hide any signs of a pet. Of course you live there, but nobody wants to walk into a laundry room that has 3 cat boxes, or to smell that an animal lives there when you walk in. And I know that's personal because there are fur babies. I have a cat myself, but you have to be careful about that. And you want to hide yourself. Now, especially, I know that sounds funny, especially if you have kids. Don't have anything up with the kids' names on it. I wouldn't have up any of the kids' pictures. You just want to protect your family. Another thing that is a little more personal is if you have any religious memorabilia or crosses or anything, you may want to put that away, because you don't know if someone walking into your home professes the same beliefs, and it's better to have that out of sight, out of mind. If there is a seasonal aspect, it's okay to decorate for it. It's nice to walk into a home like that. It's kind of walk into a staged house, right? With the pretty decorations and stuff. And if you can, it is always helpful if you can find paperwork on any recent updates that you've done, any newer appliances that you've bought, like if you've just done the roof, and this is the kind of folder you'll leave for the buyer when you go. But if you can give your realtor that information, she could put it on a feature sheet, and I say she, put it on a feature sheet inside the house so that people can see, because a buyer wants to know, when was the roof done? How old's the furnace? How old are the windows? Because those are all things they're going to have to pay for later if they haven't been done recently. So I love this picture. So now it's time to take photos. Does your realtor stand with their phone and take pictures, or do they hire a professional? That's another reason for difference in commission, right? What kind of services are they using? Do they let you take listing pictures that look like this? I hope not, because you want to, is this creating the illusion of space? Do you have all your light bulbs there? Are they all on? No. And I can see the gentleman taking the picture in the mirror. So you want to make sure that you have professional photos done. Also, you are in control. So I would request, if I were you, if it's not offered to you, a copy of the draft of the listing. So it has all of your information on there. It has the room descriptions. It has their flooring, what level they're on, what kind of fireplace you have. Every single iota about your home should be on there. It should be filled out as completely as possible, because then too much information is never too much, right? For this. You know your home better than I do. I mean, I've been through it and I've taken notes, but I'm human. I could put down that you had wood laminate instead of hardwood by mistake, just by looking at the picture. If I didn't fill it in, you know, and I looked later, it's a big difference. It could be. And then once your listing goes live, which means that it has been hit enter in the multiple listing service, it's disseminated to so many places online. So once it goes, it's called the IDX feed. Once it goes live, it's in this IDX feed that other websites draw from. So Realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia, Homes.com, Redfin, HomeSnap, it all goes out into the universe, right? Not all those places out in the universe that it automatically disseminates to play nicely with me or with the MLS. So if they're not updating information as I update it in the MLS, if I've done something wrong, you may not be able to get a correction on one of those other obscure websites. Now it's time for appointments. Woo! People are going to come see your home. You're going to want to make sure you talk to your realtor about what your preferences are. There should be no one coming into your home that is not walking through the door with a real estate agent, either with your listing agent or with another realtor who has found your listing on the MLS. They have to schedule an appointment either through an app, online, through a front desk, but you're the one who states those parameters. So if you would prefer 24 hours notice because your job is crazy hectic and you have to get the dog out or deal with the kids or whatever you have to do, don't be afraid to tell your realtor that, because it's really important, so that we don't want to stress you out. We want to try to make this easier for you. So make sure you let them know.
And you can make requirements that they wear a mask. And
yes. And that I think did I put that slide in there? Let's see. There you go. Yes. So in this day and age, we want to work to your comfort level. While in the state of Illinois, realtors and real estate related industries were deemed essential and we kept working through the pandemic, we pivoted, right? So we tried to make it as comfortable as we could for the people who were going to have to use our services. And everybody has different opinions, right, of how they want to do it. Make sure you discuss that with your realtor, because they can provide sanitizer, they can provide shoe coverings, they can provide masks, they can provide gloves, they can provide instructions that say, my seller will leave the lights on in every room and the doors open to every room, so you don't have to touch anything. So we could provide all of that information to the showing agent. Now, unfortunately, not everybody listens to instructions, but we try our best. So you'll want to make sure, or your realtor will make sure, that the buyer is first able to buy before they go into the house,
That's
right?
important.
So this is where Jean's going to talk a little bit more about the buyer and how the buyer qualifies and what that looks like, so that you have an understanding, a better understanding when it comes time to showing your house and who's qualified and et cetera, et cetera.
So the realtor that you use should be proficient in basically pre-qualifying the person that's putting in an offer. And they will generally ask for a pre-approval letter or a pre-qualification letter. The difference between the two is that a pre-approval letter is going to be much more concrete. It's not a commitment. It's not a 100% for sure thing, but it means that the lender that they chose has pulled their credit, has potentially, and most of the times, reviewed their pay stubs and income documentation, specifically if they're self-employed, because you need to see their tax returns. Where a pre-qualification sometimes doesn't even require credit. It's just some calculations of what they told you your income was, and it looks like you could purchase this price property. So you really want to make sure that you and your realtor are picking apart that pre-approval letter and making sure it's from a source, a trusted source. So the facts about loan types, there's a lot of myths about different loan types, and there's basically FHA and conventional loans. FHA is a government-backed loan. A conventional loan would be a loan that is backed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You may have heard those terms, not the candy Fannie Mae. It's Valentine's Day coming soon, but
Right.
So they set the guidelines for the different types of loans. And one of the biggest misconceptions, rightfully so, is that FHA loans are tougher or for bad credit people, or they require more out of the seller for the house, quality wise and construction wise. But that is old thinking that probably went away 15 years ago or so. And FHA loans are right now for people that have decent credit. They can't have really bad credit right now and get an FHA loan. They also do not require the seller to do repairs like they used to. They're going to look for safety hazards. They're going to look for exposed wiring, different things like that that could cause a potential harm, but they're not anywhere near as picky as they used to be. And a lot of people feel that if there's something that needs to be done, then the seller has to do it, but that's not the case. The seller can allow the buyer to do it. Now, generally, you're not going to let somebody that you don't know come in and just do work themselves. So the buyer could pay for maybe an electrician to put in some new outlets or something. It doesn't have to be paid for by the seller.
I've had a couple of those where the buyer like painted the outside of the windows because they were peeling paint, or the buyer put a railing on to go up the stairs, right?
Mhm.
Because it required a railing. So it really is just minor safety things, and it's not a substandard loan at all.
No. If I was a seller, I would not be afraid of an FHA loan. And, FHA loans, if someone's doing an FHA loan, it doesn't mean that they're a greater or lesser risk than someone doing a conventional loan. You could come up with somebody that's putting 20% down on a conventional loan, and then their donor for their gift decides that they're not going to give the gift anymore, and now these people don't qualify. So I would take a look at other features, and that's part of what your realtor will do is kind of vet those buyers and let you know which one is the best one in their opinion. And ultimately, it's up to you.
Don't move on yet, because there's another inspection that sometimes happens with a different kind of loan. Could you tell them a little bit about VA loans? Don't they do another inspection?
Well, VA just does their typical appraisal. They just have special appraisers that are specifically licensed to do VA loans. And they'll have their own set of requirements as well, similar to FHA.
And does that mean anything different to our sellers if someone has a VA loan versus a conventional
No,
loan?
I mean, they're usually doing no money down. So they have what they tend to call skin in the game, but 100% financing VA loans are the best performing loans on the books. So they're not very risky loans at all.
Great.
And sometimes it's nice because a veteran, if they've been disabled, will get a break on their real estate taxes. So you might find someone that normally wouldn't be able to afford that house, but now is approved with flying colors because they don't have a tax bill.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So a lot of times a buyer will come in and ask you for a closing cost credit or a seller credit. And basically what they're trying to do is maximize the amount that they have in cash, either for down payment or because of things that they might want to do to the house after they move in. The last thing we want to see is someone buying a home and then having to eat top ramen for the next couple months. I've actually refinanced people after a year or two of them being in the house, and I've gone to their house to do their paperwork, and they've got virtually or almost no furniture.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't leave themselves enough money to purchase and furnish the rest of the house. So we don't want to see that happen. So a lot of times buyers will ask for the seller to pay for some closing costs, and it just basically kind of gets worked into the whole transaction.
So what happens then, right, is the loan, let's say the loan, it's $350,000, right? But the buyer wants $10,000 in closing cost credit. The buyer is still getting the total loan for $350,000. That's how that works?
No,
How does that work?
it's just if the price is the loan is the loan and the price is the price. So the seller
Okay.
the seller just makes sure that whatever they're netting is what they want to net, regardless of how much they're contributing to the buyer.
And in this competitive market, you'll see a lot of times if your house is priced at $350,000 and they want that $10,000 back in credit, that they'll offer more.
Right. They might go over list price. They might say, okay, well, we'll give you $355,000 for the house if you give us $10,000 back for closing costs. Now, $10,000 is excessive. But
Yes, I just was using
Yeah.
easy
math.
numbers. Okay, thanks. Sorry to
but yeah.
interrupt.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks. Now, there's a big difference too between being pre-approved by like an online service or by a person who has as much experience as you do. How many years have you been doing this?
Over 20, or about 23.
Long time.
And length of experience is not as much important as number of transactions that you do, because you could be in the business for 20 years and only do one or two transactions a year.
That's true.
And you're not going to be that experienced, but I probably average 10 to 15 transactions a month minimum. And I've owned my own mortgage company, so I'm very proficient in all aspects of it. But when you're using some of these online services, I won't mention any names, but there are some sellers that when they see that pre-approval letter come over and you're using a certain online company, they will not accept an offer by somebody who's using that because the history has proven that they might not close or close on time. So it's very important to be using a preferred lender, and that's part of what you would do as a realtor, is making sure that buyer is, has a very strong pre-approval, and it's not just a flimsy piece of paper by Joe's Mortgage.
Yeah, so sometimes what realtors will do with their listings is they will request that the buyer, if they feel it's shaky, right, gets pre-approved by a preferred lender. It doesn't mean that they will get their lending through that lender, but I have a relationship that I trust with Gene. I trust that anything he tells me will close. So that way you're further protected if the realtor uses that as one of the tools in their toolkit.
Right. So the buyer would come in with their pre-approval and their offer, and then your realtor would say, okay, I'm a little shaky on your buyer. Can I have my mortgage guy take a look at, or mortgage girl, take a look at the buyer to see that they really are pre-approved? And that doesn't mean, if that's me, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be pulling their credit or doing everything. I might just be talking to them, getting their information, maybe asking them if I can see the credit report, if not, at least see the scores and see what their debt is, and do some numbers just to make sure that everything's in the right ballpark. Because there's things that we can ask, or that we would know, that a seller or a realtor cannot or would not know about that buyer and their personal life.
A little bit of forensics on their
Yes.
background to let us know if it's doable or not, and that's okay. It's allowed. It's nothing that's not. So now you've shown it a number of times, and you'll hopefully receive an offer and maybe multiple offers in the climate that we find ourselves in. So your agent will go over that offer with you. They'll tell you what the things are that are in a contract. Anything that's written in on a blank pretty much is negotiable. What we use is a blank form, or a form that has blanks that are fill in the blanks, because we're not attorneys, right? So in there will be price, which is negotiable. Closing date would be something that's negotiable. The type of loan might be negotiable. Whether or not they have something to sell again might be negotiable. It would just be a matter of what they want to do. If they're asking for a credit, that of course is negotiable. If they're asking for a home warranty, so there are a lot of things other than price when you're looking at a contract. So you'll want to negotiate that. There are three things you could do as the seller in the middle of this back and forth, and that is accept, reject, or counter. So if you think somebody's come in you could leave that, that's okay. If you think somebody came in too terribly low, you could just flat out reject the offer. You don't even need to have a dialogue with them if you don't think they're being reasonable. It doesn't mean that buyer can't come back in with another offer, maybe $10,000 higher, and now they're in the ballpark, and now you can have that discussion again and either accept, reject, or counter offer. So that kind of goes, first time you will get an offer, it's on paper, and your realtor will present it to you, either the document itself or the terms of the document, but she won't, or he, usually approach you until that document's in hand, because it doesn't mean anything if it's a promise, right? If it's, you don't want your realtor telling you, oh yeah, 3 people said they were going to make an offer, because then you're going to get all excited. And what if they don't come in? Because that can happen. So that's what happens with that. So then you accept the offer. What's going to happen at that point is the buyer has to make any changes on the document that we've been negotiating, and you will then sign the document. Once it's fully signed, it's called an executed contract, and that starts the attorney review and inspection period. That's 5 full business days from receiving that executed contract. So if you received it today, anytime today, your first full day is tomorrow, Friday. And then weekends don't count. So then you'd have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. By the end of Thursday is when the period is over. This is contingency number 1. During this contingency, your attorney will change the contract, change any language he doesn't like, or make any specific suggestions and additions to the contract, because we as realtors can't do that, right? So they can do that for you. You can go ahead. So there you go. You need an attorney in our part of Illinois, and it's funny, in all different parts you don't need one. You do need one. In Wisconsin, they don't have them at all, right? So it's all very different. Your real estate professional should have referrals for you of people that they know, like, and trust, that they have done work with, know are diligent, know are communicative, know they'll be there to answer your questions. While of course you could use whoever you want to, they should have a list of these people for you. The buyer will then, during that 5 days, also schedule a home inspection. During that home inspection, typically who comes in is the buyer, the buyer's agent, and the inspector. I, as the realtor, the listing agent, always make sure that the other agent is coming in. Not everyone is as diligent. I had one time where I didn't check, because it's a given. That's what's supposed to happen. And the buyer came in with the inspector. Well, the inspector's busy inspecting. What's the buyer doing? Who's watching the buyer? Is the buyer going through your jewelry box? I sure hope not. This particular buyer was pulling up a corner of the carpeting to see if it was hardwood underneath. Good thing he actually bought the house because he'd already pulled up the carpeting. We were all very livid about that. And those are the experiences we learn as we do the business, that we modify our behavior and change the way we do things because we realize that not everybody does things quite the right way all the time. So there'll be a home inspection. The inspector is letting that buyer know what they don't know is just a person looking in and saying, this seller's house is pretty, right? The age of the mechanicals, the roof, if it's not snowy like it is right now, they even climb up on the roof. They'll check all the electrical outlets. They'll check the windows. They check all kinds of stuff and then send the buyer a report on what they found. Then, before the end of that 5-day period is up, the buyer discusses that inspection with their attorney. They decide what to ask for. If they're going to ask for anything to be fixed, if they're going to ask for a credit for something to be fixed. As a seller, you may decide you don't want to fix it and you want to give them a credit. That's fine. You may decide you want to fix it yourself. What if they're asking for a new furnace and you're okay with that because yours is 28 years old, right? And you're going to get them a new furnace. It's either them getting it or you getting it. Are you going to get the most expensive one as the seller? Probably not. But the buyer's going to want the most expensive one as the buyer. There are also other remedies, like a home warranty you can offer to the buyers if it's mechanicals. It's a $500 insurance policy roughly, and it would cover the furnace. As long as the furnace is working when you sell the house, they shouldn't ask for a new one. They've been told by the inspector it's near the end of its useful life, and to save money, right, to be prepared.
Yeah, mine was at the end of its useful life 7 years ago when we bought.
And it's still going?
Still going strong, knock on wood.
Right. If you maintain things, usually they continue to work as long as you take good care of them. So there will be a letter that comes over from the buyer's attorney to your attorney stating any asks for that inspection. This is where we go again. So we had a negotiation at the beginning, right, for price and the details of the contract. Now you could click. We're going to negotiate again on the items on the home inspection report. At any point in time, if you don't come to an agreement, usually the buyer gets their earnest money back. If it's nothing that they've done that's been out of their control, they usually get their earnest money back. It is skin in the game, but I've only seen one buyer not get their earnest money back in 14 years of business. So don't think that that's an automatic, that you're just going to get to keep that money if the contract falls apart at this point. That's why I always encourage my sellers, of course, if it's egregious, right? If you're way too far apart, it's just not going to happen. But if you're close and you're squabbling over $1,000, you may want to look at your priorities and see if squabbling over that $1,000 is worth you having to start the process all over again, relist it, get a new buyer, go back to one of those other buyers if it was multiple contracts,
Make another mortgage payment.
Make another mortgage payment. That also gives you more utilities, more taxes, more everything. All right. If you've come to an agreement on everything, attorney review period is closed. We call it AI period. It is closed. Yay, you've gone over a hurdle. Typically, until that hurdle has been broached, the buyer doesn't fully apply for their mortgage or order their appraisal. I want you to explain that.
Right, so you have, I believe it's a 10-day period as a buyer, once your contract has started, once the seller signs it, to apply for a mortgage. So the buyer will provide, or should be asked to provide, something called an intent to proceed, which is a document that's signed with your application package when you apply for a mortgage. And that tells the attorneys that the buyer has complied with that contingency of applying for mortgage within that specific period of time. The appraisal doesn't get ordered until after the home inspection is done and those issues are resolved. Now, in cases where you need to have a very, very, very short closing date, the buyer may choose to order the appraisal right away and not wait for the home inspection to be done. But that's a risk that they take because they would be forking out that money before knowing really 100% if they're actually going to buy the property in case they find something on the home inspection.
Right.
So the appraisal is a home evaluation by a third party. And we are required now to order the appraisal through a management company. The management company will pick the appraiser, so we're not communicating with the appraiser. So we can't influence the value of the appraisal. So it's a true valued appraisal. And what they're going to do is they're going to compare that home to other homes in the neighborhood and then in the area, depending on what's in the neighborhood, and make sure that the banks want to make sure that the purchase price isn't above the actual value of the property. And it doesn't mean they can't buy the house. The banks just want to know, and they're going to base it on they're going to base the buyer's loan on the lesser of the value of the home or the purchase price of the home. So you have two scenarios. The property appraises out at the purchase price or above, in which case as a seller, that's all you basically know. You don't know how much it actually appraised at. Or the property appraises at less than the purchase price. And most of the time, this is the third contingency. This is written in by the attorneys that if your property doesn't appraise as a buyer, you can basically back out. And that's one of the
So that would be in the buyer's letter to the seller's attorney.
Correct.
Right.
Now, if you don't have that, if the buyer's attorney doesn't do that, then they're basically proceeding regardless of the value as long as they can get the loan.
Because that's the next contingency is
Right.
mortgage contingency, right?
And that's when the loan goes into underwriting, the underwriter is looking to make sure that the mortgage people that took all the information did their job and was competent enough to calculate everything correctly and review everything correctly. The underwriters are always going to find documentation to ask for. They're always they're doing background searches. They're looking to see if your name pops up as someone who owned a property in Arkansas. And if it wasn't you, give me a letter saying it wasn't you. They always want to find something. It makes them feel better. So,
Makes them feel better.
We're gathering all the documentation and getting it over to the underwriter. They're issuing a conditional approval, which will generally be sometimes before the appraisal comes in, and it'll include the appraisal. It'll include documentation from your attorney as a seller, because the buyer side needs some of that stuff. And then it might include, right now during COVID, the underwriters are being required by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA to document everything up until the closing. So realtors should be putting the contingency date for the mortgage to be clear to close and final approved closer to the closing date, because the guidelines now are that we have to provide pay stubs and bank statements all the way up until the closing, where it used to be just until we're clear to close. Then you have a 30 to 60 day window before any additional documents are requested. But now, because of COVID and because of job instability, they're making sure that there's not a foreseen undisclosed potential layoff or anything that could possibly happen. So they're kind of being a little conservative about it, in my opinion, right now. But nevertheless, as a seller, it's good for you to know that, because you might be thinking, what the heck's going on here? Why isn't my buyer clear to close yet? And your realtor, if you chose a realtor that doesn't do a whole lot of business, might not understand that's what's going on right now, and might feed your frenzy per se. So the conditional approval is the underwriter saying, okay, I looked at all your documentation, everything looks good. This is the additional items that we need. And that's a standard part of the process. So as a seller, you want to understand that, and that should be communicated to you that, okay, my buyer's conditionally approved. We want to get to that final approval, but right now it's conditional approval, which that's the most nail biter. Underwriter looking at that initially.
That's usually when extensions come across, and I didn't put that in as a slide, but now that you mention that, it's probably good for me to mention that sometimes there's extensions for the mortgage approval or the clear to close. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to close later than the date that's on your contract. It just means that they have to get another bank statement or form. What are some examples of these conditional things that they ask for?
Sometimes it's a bank statement to show the earnest money coming out of the account, because you have to verify that the earnest money was actually given and received and cashed. It could be credit inquiries. Now, some of these things should have been asked for and received and upfront, but sometimes a credit inquiry comes up. It's hard to believe, but sometimes buyers apply for credit while purchasing a home.
No.
It's a no, but the underwriter is going to want to know if a loan was opened based on that credit inquiry. Sometimes it's something that's on title. You might be buying, as a seller, you might have your property in a trust, or you might be selling it on behalf of an estate. The buyer's mortgage company is going to need to know that you, as the seller, have the right to sell that property, and you're not dependent on siblings that could come back and force your buyer to give the property back.
So is it like the seller might need to sign an affidavit or send something over, right?
Right. So the title company would have to insure over any potential nasty stuff in the future.
So there are a lot of moving parts, right? But once you get the clear to close,
the full loan approval, that's ultimately what we're looking for. That's basically the underwriter saying, okay, we don't want anything else. We're done. I am moving this folder off of my desk and putting it into Foreverland. It's going to sleep. Yeah. And now, get to the closing. Underwriter doesn't ever want to see it again.
They've done all their I dotting and T crossing. So they're done with the file.
Now, nothing is 100%. I'm a little superstitious. Nothing's 100% until keys are given over to the buyer at the closing. Because I've seen scenarios where the buyer disappeared after being clear to close. I've seen scenarios
Don't scare them.
where the sellers disappeared. The seller didn't come to the closing. So I always tell people, I don't want to jinx it. Nothing's 100% until you're at the closing and everything is exchanged and we're done.
But you're clear. That clear to close is the biggest thing you as a seller will kind of go.
That's the big sigh of relief.
Right. Because in the meantime, you're doing a lot of stuff getting ready for that closing date, right?
You could have your boxes packed, and that's Homer getting his donut.
So some of the things that you'll be doing, you could click while you're waiting for this. In the meantime, you'll be packing, arranging movers, arranging storage, calling to change your utilities, putting in change of addresses at the post office, all that kinds of stuff.
And if your kids are grown and they should be out of the house and you're downsizing, you're going to be helping them find a place to live.
This is true. This can be very true. Now, when it comes to closing, which would be next, we schedule it. It is based on the attorney's schedules. They could give a care about my schedule or Jean's schedule. They do give a care about your schedule, mostly the buyer's schedule, because you as the seller can pre-sign those sales documents and turn over the keys to the attorney or to your realtor, leave any housing documentation with those professionals or in a drawer in the kitchen at the house. You don't have to be at closing. If you are, some sellers close and purchase on the same day.
Yeah.
And if that happens, typically you'll close in the morning on the sale of your house. You'll be homeless for a couple hours until you close on the sale of your purchase, but you'll have the check from that close in the morning for your close in the afternoon, or the presence of that money, right? If it's staying staying all tied in at the same title company or whatnot. And the title companies can also transfer between title companies.
Yes,
right?
correct.
Yeah. So that's a lot of nuts and bolts. Do you have any questions? This is where I'm going to ask for Patty's help.
Happy to oblige. I'm going to wait for some incoming questions, but I've jotted a couple of my own. But I'll give first dibs, obviously, to our attendees if there's anything that they would like to ask. Okay, well then I'm going to get the ball rolling. I've got two questions. For sale by owners, there are individuals that will attempt to sell the house. I remember they used to call, are they still called FSBOs?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
In your experience, how long will an individual or a couple or a family attempt to sell it on their own before they then defer it to a professional real estate broker?
Oh, that's a good question. I know that there are different companies and different programs and structures out there. I also know that when you look at the statistics, when you work with a realtor, the sales time is typically shorter. And typically, although you're paying a commission to a realtor for their expertise, you garner a higher price typically for your house as well. I don't know a specific number of days, so I don't want to misquote anything, but that has been my experience. Now,
I think what I'm trying to get here is not before a for sale by owner is able to do it,
right.
but before they defer it and they say, before they kind of come to terms with they don't have the means to successfully sell their house. You know, the attempt to sell on their own hasn't come to fruition and they realize they don't have the right channels, the right marketing expertise. But, you know, they've attempted to cut some corners in a commission, but really they may have been on the market for weeks or perhaps months without any activity before they finally relinquish it to an agent.
Oh, okay. I know what you're saying. So I was actually this year referred to someone who was a for sale by owner by one of their neighbors. I had sold the neighbor's house, and this gentleman wanted to do it for sale by owner. And, you know, if that's what you want to try, that's fine. But he had had it on the market for at least 2 or 3 months. When I approached him and just said, your neighbor is concerned, I just wanted to send you the market data. This is, you know, this is who I am. This is what I do. If you want to contact me, please do. I'd be glad to help you. And just open the conversation that way. I'm not pushy by any and all means. But as a for sale by owner, what he had really done was merely had a sign in his yard, which really doesn't market it, even though inventory is tight. If you weren't driving past that house, you didn't know it was for sale. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it is really important to, you know, depending on your priorities, you know, if you think that you could do that job and still get the money that you need to get, you know, to be able to move on, that's okay, you know, but we're here to help you. We really do a lot more than just to open the door or control the keys.
I do just from experience and from inquiries, you know, and working with the public, I do think that if ever someone really wants to get a very clear picture of what a real estate broker does, is to attempt to do it on their own for a spell until you finally just come to terms that you know that's just not your field of expertise and you need to refer it to someone who is.
Yeah, my husband's a plumber, and he'd tell you the same if you tried to do your own plumbing too. And have
you seem to understand very clearly, Linda. Sometimes, you know, people, your home is very close to your heart, and so you want to give it a go on your own. And once you say that you've given it a go on your own, you realize that you really do need to ask for some direction and expertise in the field.
Thank you.
Gina, I have a question for you. Is when you're talking about appraisals, during the time of the recession with the foreclosures and the short sales that was going on, how, if at all, was that affecting appraisals for other homes?
Back when the market crashed?
2008, 9, 10.
Well, it was definitely an issue. The appraisers weren't quite sure what to do. And I actually had, quite a bit of business at that time, and people buying homes for a lot less than what they were actually worth. And as the homes were selling for those prices, and to be honest with you, the challenge was not necessarily when the market crashed, it was after. So the market crashed, prices were reducing, and people were short selling, and the people buying the homes were appraising for more because there still wasn't a whole lot of short sales yet. But as we started going further and further along, that was creating the somewhat artificially low value in the neighborhood. And then people buying after that were having to be up against those short sale prices.
Mm-hmm.
That's a term that's very fitting, artificially low.
Yeah. Okay. And they at the same time, not the same time, but on that same note, prior to that happening, there was a lot of places that were artificially high. You would get, there was a couple that were arrested, I guess, caught. What some people would do is they would buy up neighborhoods and set the prices by buying them at higher values than what they should to create a sale. So a realtor would say, hey, Joe, you're my friend. Why don't you buy my home for $50,000 more than what it's worth? It might not appraise, but as long as you close and overpay for it, and I'll give you the money back, it'll create a sale that's higher than what it should be. Now I can sell my neighbor's house at a higher value, and then I could sell that neighbor's house at a higher value.
Because the dip was offset.
Right.
Okay.
And the transverse is what happened during that time, where there was an abundance of inventory on the market versus the shortage that we're seeing now.
Right.
So what did you say? You said they could be on the market for 6 days, and then Jean chimed in 6 minutes. I mean, that's a real stark difference. Right. Yeah. Right now is definitely the movement. Linda, question for you. We were talking about improvements to make in staging the house and preparing the house. Are there any improvements that you find that some sellers plan to invest in, but really wouldn't make that much of a difference for a potential buyer, where the seller says, well, I put 500 or 5,000 into this and I want to get it back somehow, but really it wouldn't have made an iota of difference to a buyer?
You will never get 100% recoup of any remodel project or anything you put into your house. I will state that as a fact. So if you put $10,000 into a new kitchen, doesn't necessarily mean that means the price or the value of your home goes up by $10,000. I always advise sellers, if it's something that you're going to use, then do it, right? If you're going to be there a year or two or whatever, however long, and you want to enjoy the use of it, go ahead and do it. But if it's like, let's say your carpet is absolutely trashed, right? And you don't, that I might suggest then you find a cheaper option, right? Because you're selling it. You're not going to live there for another 6 years and need good tread or a good fiber, right? You just need something to look clean and pretty for when you have it listed. Those types of suggestions I will make. You take or you leave them. You can price them based on the fact that they need new carpet. You can also, as a seller, say, I will offer you $1,000 carpet credit, right? Because you know that there's an issue with the flooring. So it's always best to get the realtor's opinions on those experiences so that you know based on your priorities as a seller, because again, it's all about you. It's not about me. I'm just giving you information. What you do with it then is up to you.
And I actually have one transaction going right now where the home appraised in Antioch for $40,000 less than the asking or than the agreed upon price. And the listing agent her contention is that, well, my seller spent $7,000 on the fence and they spent $50,000 on their basement, and they have stainless steel appliances and they have a sauna that we were thinking about taking with us, but we're taking with them, but now they're not. But those types of things really don't increase the value of your property.
Everybody expects you to have a kitchen. Everybody expects you to have a bathroom. They expect you to have a roof.
A finished basement will, but not to the tune of 50,000. You could spend 100,000 on a finished basement. Easy, spend 100,000, but you're not going to get 100,000 in value out of it unless you have, a $2 million home or something.
Jean, you painted a really good account of how many transactions you have monthly that you've been working on. Where does or do you work with customers in refinancing as well?
Yes, I do refinancing work. I help people with their credit. I help people do their rehab work. I don't actually physically go help them do the rehab work.
I'll give you a hammer.
I help them finance it. But yeah, I do a lot of refinancing, and a lot of people have been going down from a 30-year to a 15-year or 30-year to a 20-year and not even changing their payment very much.
Especially with the low interest rates that we have now.
Mhm.
You also do new construction loans? Do you?
Yeah, rehab and new
all kinds of stuff.
construction.
So all different kinds of products.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my questions. I don't see any other questions coming up from our attendees. So
Okay, we've got just a few more slides.
In case anybody was wondering, in case a question pops up, we're both married.
Not to each other.
Not to each other, but we are. We're unavailable.
Sorry.
are you mentioning that just because we're approaching Valentine's Day weekend,
Yes,
Jean?
it's
Yep.
coming up.
Okay.
And we just wanted to say again that we'd love for you to save the date or tell your friends about On Your Mark, Get Set, Buy, which the library will be presenting on March 8th. You can register for that at the library's website on their calendar. Please, if you wouldn't mind providing the feedback on the form that Patty sent out to you earlier today with the Zoom link. It helps us become better presenters and helps us know what people are looking for when we do a program like this, because we really are here to help. We're part of the community trying to make sure our community thrives. So if you could provide feedback, we'd truly appreciate that. And last but not least, thanks for attending tonight. We're glad you were here.
Thanks for everyone who registered and attended tonight. And Jean and Linda, thank you again for all you do for the community as a whole and for making tonight's session informative and also entertaining.
Thanks, Patty.
Thanks,
Thanks,
You're a
everybody.
great team. Take care. We'll see you again on the 8th.
And bye-bye.
So long. Good night.